Hello everyone, I'm Dead Knight and this is In It to Win It. Don't forget to hit subscribe to see any updates going on with my channel and leave respectful comments on all my videos. Today we are going to be talking about the big winner in the Wailing Caverns mini set from Forge from the Barrens, which is Shaman. Shaman has really come out on top on this. We went from having 0 viable decks last week to now having at least 3 and arguably 4 viable decks. And I just want to talk about the very subtle buffs that got them to this point. So the thing that didn't get them here was buffing the individual cards from the last nerf and buff rounds. So those did very little to help Shaman. Unbound Elemental seeing a little bit of play now that it has 1 extra attack, but really it was all about the release of a couple new cards in the mini set. The first one is going to be, of course, Primal Dungeoneer. Every single Shaman that you play against is going to drop this on turn 3. If they don't, they're usually losing. And it's a 2/3 for 3 that draws a nature spell and an elemental. Well, it draws any spell, but if you draw the nature spell, you draw an elemental. So every Shaman deck is running elementals and nature spells, even if they're not centered around those. So it's pretty much a lock that they're going to do that. This has given them a much smoother transition into the mid game. It has made sure that they always have a handful of threats, and Shaman threats are always very severe. So with the nature spell, you're looking at usually either Lightning Bloom, Lightning Bolt, Storm Strike, or Dunk Tank. All 4 of those cards are seriously heavy hitters. Lightning Bloom can just launch you ahead in the mid game right away. Storm Strike can take control of the board, or Storm Strike can partner up with Doomhammer and deal a ton of damage. Then you also have Dunk Tank, which is can completely close out a game by either dealing 6 damage to a minion and blowing up their board, or 4 damage to your opponent's face and blowing up the board. So you can kind of make room for your weapon while you're doing this. So really, the possibilities are endless with this, and also you get to draw an elemental. So even decks that aren't running elemental are usually running Cage Match Custodian, which you can play next turn and tutor for whatever weapon you're running. So the great thing about Shaman with all these different builds is each Shaman build has their own specialized weapon for that build. So your elemental Shamans are going to be running the Whack-A-Null Hammer, your aggro Shamans are running Doomhammer, and now we've even seen a return of Evolve Shaman now, which is going to run Bogspine Knuckles, and all these decks can hit Legend. So that's really exciting. The other thing that they have all been powered by is a new 1-drop Wailing Vapor. So 1 3-for-1 elemental, and every time you play an elemental, it gets 1 more attack. Wow, this card is just seriously wow. The problem that Elemental Shaman was having before, there were tons of great Elementals, but there's only 1 card you could play on the first turn, and it was Kindling, the Kindling Elemental. So if you didn't draw that guy, you pretty much would lose because you couldn't smooth out your curve, and you had nothing to do on turn 1, and your deck is just too scripted to adapt from losing the early game that fast. But now that you have Wailing Vapor, you have a bunch of different ways to get on the board, put out a credible threat early, and that consistency has changed the deck to be extremely threatening early, very efficient, very lethal. So Kindling Vapor, and then next turn playing any other elemental or coining out a Whack-A-Null Hammer means that you often have the board for the rest of the game, and that's that. Your opponent can't recover. So Wailing Vapor has been a massive buff. So has the Primal Dungeoneer. Now I mentioned that Evolve Shaman is back. The thing that brought it back was mostly Selfless Sidekick. So this is another new card for 7 mana. It puts a weapon from your deck into play. So Bogspine Knuckles has been that weapon for some Shamans, and then they also have a 7 mana guy to immediately evolve as soon as they play it. So that is pretty cool. It's made for some pretty silly plays and some very frustrated opponents. Not quite as bad as back in the day, when in its heyday with Darkmoon Fair, but it's it's still pretty obnoxious, and sometimes this deck can go to legend. The thing that I do want to note about Shaman's buffs is I mentioned before that every Shaman deck has a weapon, very good weapon. So this is the first time that I've seen, since the last time Evolved Shaman was good, the first time I've seen people teching in acidic swamp oozes. So a lot of decks are running acidic swamp oozes now. So even though weapons were a huge part of the meta last week before this set came out, now acidic swamp ooze is making an appearance. I think really the reason is Doomhammer, because it has 8 durability and it is the key for aggro shaman winning. It's the only way that they can win. So rather than just lose when they play Doomhammer, people are playing acidic swamp ooze. But it's also really great against Evolved Shaman. It completely neuters Evolved Shaman. If you get it against Whack-A-Null Hammer, it very seriously stifles Elemental Shaman. Also, of course, it's good against Demon Hunter, Regular Hunter, Paladin, Warrior. So, obviously it's a great card. The Weapon Rogue is, completely out of the game if you play this card. But nobody was running Acidic Swamp Ooze until these Shaman buffs came out, and Shaman really started dominating the meta. So this is really the only way that I've seen the meta shift for other classes, teching in new cards because of how good Shaman is, which is great. Shaman has been feast or famine for so long. It's great to see them finally have viable decks again. It's sad that Acidic Swamp Ooze can pretty much end the game. But even though it's fragile, it still has a place at the top tier right now. So I'm pretty excited for Shaman. They really came out huge winners for this meta, and I'm glad to see them getting some play. So what do you think of Shaman now? What do you think is the best class in the set right now? Please leave some respectful comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next time.